On the barren, wind-swept plains of Elthera, an alien world steeped in myth and mystery, there stood a monolithic stone pedestal. Upon it rested the ancient sword of Thraxil, a weapon of unparalleled craftsmanship and enigmatic power. Legends whispered through the eons claimed that only a being of true worthiness could lift the sword, a feat that had eluded the planet's denizens for millennia. The sword was a relic from a time when gods and mortals walked side by side, and its purpose had long been forgotten, shrouded in layers of myth and superstition. Elthera's many species, each with their unique physiology and strengths, had tried and failed to lift the sword. The Dernish, known for their colossal strength, had strained until their muscles tore. The Marnaks, masters of telekinesis, had focused their collective will to no avail. Even the revered Eldera, beings of pure energy, could not budge it. The sword remained an immovable constant, a silent guardian of its secrets. Enter Jonathan Calloway, an unassuming human from Earth who had stumbled upon this world quite by accident. A member of a deep space exploratory mission, Jonathan had been separated from his crew when their ship encountered a wormhole. Flung across galaxies, he crash-landed on Elthera, a planet so alien yet eerily reminiscent of Earth's ancient tales of gods and heroes. Jonathan was no warrior. He was a linguist and historian, with a penchant for ancient artifacts and a mind full of Earth's mythology. As he wandered the plains of Elthera, he was drawn to the pedestal and the sword by a pull he couldn't quite explain. The towering blade shimmered with an otherworldly light, its hilt engraved with symbols that seemed to dance in his mind's eye. The Eltherans who had gathered, a mixture of curiosity and reverence in their multifaceted eyes, watched as this frail-looking human approached their sacred relic. Murmurs spread through the crowd, a mix of skepticism and hope. Could this outsider, this creature from a distant star, succeed where they had all failed? Jonathan approached the pedestal, the wind whipping around him like a living entity. He placed his hand on the hilt, feeling an immediate connection, a surge of energy that raced up his arm and into his very soul. It was as if the sword recognized him, acknowledged him. With a deep breath, Jonathan pulled. The sword, silent for millennia, slid from its stone cradle as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. Gasps and cries of astonishment echoed across the plains. The ground trembled, the skies darkened, and a beam of light shot into the heavens from the tip of the sword. The Eltherans fell to their knees, some in awe, others in fear. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but with it came questions and unease. What did this mean for their world? For centuries, they had believed the sword would bring salvation or doom, but which one had they just witnessed? Jonathan, too, was overwhelmed. The sword thrummed with power, whispering secrets of the universe into his mind. Visions of ancient battles, lost civilizations, and cosmic forces danced before his eyes. He realized that the sword was more than a weapon. It was a key, a conduit to something far greater. The Eltheran Council convened immediately, summoning Jonathan to their crystalline halls. They demanded answers. Why was he able to lift the sword? What was his purpose here? Jonathan, still grappling with his own questions, could only share what the sword had shown him, a fragmented narrative of a cosmic war, an eternal struggle between forces of creation and destruction. As days turned into weeks, Jonathan immersed himself in Eltheran culture, learning their language and history. He discovered that the sword was one of many relics scattered across the galaxy, each tied to a specific world and its fate. These artifacts were remnants of an ancient civilization, the Thraxilians, who had once ruled the cosmos with unmatched power and wisdom. The Eltherans, now united in purpose, looked to Jonathan as their chosen one, the bearer of the sword. They believed he was destined to lead them in the coming storm, a conflict that would decide the fate of not just their world, but the entire galaxy. But Jonathan was reluctant. He was a scholar, not a leader, and the weight of responsibility was crushing. He sought counsel from the Eldera, the oldest and wisest of the Eltherans, who revealed that the sword had chosen him because of his heart, not his strength or knowledge. It was his capacity for empathy, his understanding of sacrifice and love, that made him worthy. As Jonathan grappled with his destiny, a dark force stirred in the shadows. The Harbingers, remnants of the ancient enemy the Thraxilians had once defeated, had sensed the awakening of the sword. They were coming to reclaim it, to reignite the flames of war and chaos. The peaceful plains of Elthera were soon transformed into a battlefield, as the Harbingers descended upon the world with their nightmarish machines and relentless fury. The Eltherans, though technologically advanced, were ill-prepared for such an onslaught. They looked to Jonathan, their hope and their sword-bearer, for salvation. Jonathan, now fully attuned to the sword's power, led the charge. He discovered that the sword was not just a weapon but a beacon, calling forth allies from across the galaxy. Beings of light and shadow, creatures of myth and legend, rallied to their cause, bound by a common purpose, to protect the balance of the universe. The battle raged on, a cacophony of destruction and hope. Jonathan, wielding the sword with a grace and power that belied his humble origins, became the heart of the resistance. He fought not just with strength but with the wisdom and compassion that had always defined him. As the final confrontation loomed, Jonathan knew that victory would come at a great cost. The sword had shown him glimpses of the future, of sacrifices that would need to be made. He steeled himself for what was to come, ready to give everything to protect the world that had become his home. In a climactic battle that shook the very foundations of reality, Jonathan faced the leader of the Harbingers, a being of darkness and despair. Their clash was not just physical but spiritual, a struggle between light and shadow, hope and despair. In the end, it was Jonathan's humanity, his ability to love and to sacrifice, that turned the tide. He used the sword not to destroy but to heal, to restore balance and peace. The Harbingers were defeated, their dark influence banished, and the galaxy was once again safe. Jonathan, now a hero of legend, returned the sword to its pedestal. He knew that his journey was not over, that there were other worlds, other swords, and other destinies to fulfill. But for now, Elthera was at peace, and he had found a new home among the stars. As he stood on the wind-swept plains, the sword gleaming in the light of Elthera's twin suns, Jonathan felt a sense of purpose and belonging. He was no longer just a human lost in the cosmos. He was the bearer of the ancient sword of Thraxil, a guardian of peace and a beacon of hope. And his story was just beginning. As the twin suns of Elthera set beyond the horizon, casting long shadows over the plains, Jonathan Calloway stood silent before the sword. The sky above shimmered with the light of distant stars, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the responsibilities he now bore. The sword, back in its stone cradle, seemed to pulse gently, as if acknowledging the calm after the storm. The peace they had fought so hard for was palpable, but Jonathan knew it was fragile, like the first breaths of a newborn. The Eltherans, though celebrating their victory, were also wary. They had lost much, and the scars of the recent conflict ran deep. Their once peaceful world had been forever changed, the echoes of battle still lingering in their minds. Yet, in Jonathan, they saw a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times, light could prevail. As days turned into weeks, Jonathan took on a new role, not just as the bearer of the sword but as a bridge between worlds. He traveled across Elthera, meeting with leaders, healers, and scholars, sharing knowledge and fostering unity. He became a student of their culture, absorbing their history and understanding their ways. In return, he shared stories of Earth, of its struggles and triumphs, drawing parallels that deepened their bond. Yet, amidst the rebuilding and the newfound camaraderie, Jonathan was haunted by visions. The sword's whispers had grown louder, more insistent, revealing fragments of a larger puzzle. The victory on Elthera was but a single chapter in a grander narrative, one that spanned galaxies and epochs. The Thraxilians' legacy was vast, their artifacts scattered across countless worlds, each holding the key to a larger mystery. One night, as the skies above Elthera glimmered with the auroras of the Thraxilian energies still resonating from the battle, Jonathan gathered the Eltheran Council once more. In the crystalline hall that had witnessed so much turmoil and resolution, he spoke of his visions and the path that lay ahead. "The sword has shown me other worlds," Jonathan began, his voice steady, yet filled with the weight of revelation. "Elthera was just the beginning. There are other artifacts, each as powerful, each tied to the fate of their worlds. And the Harbingers were only a fragment of the darkness that seeks to unravel the balance. We must find these artifacts, protect them, and understand the full extent of the Thraxilians' intentions." The council, though initially hesitant, saw the truth in Jonathan's words. The fight they had faced was not isolated. It was part of a cosmic tapestry that required vigilance and courage. They agreed to support Jonathan in his quest, offering their resources, knowledge, and the aid of their bravest explorers. Preparations began in earnest. The finest minds of Elthera worked alongside Jonathan to develop starships capable of traversing the vast distances between the stars. They crafted maps from the sword's visions, plotting the locations of the other artifacts. Teams were assembled, a blend of Eltherans and other beings who had heeded the sword's call during the battle, all united by a common purpose. As Jonathan stood in the command center of the newly christened ship, the Luminous Path, he felt a surge of determination. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers yet unknown, but he was no longer alone. The bonds forged in the fires of battle, the friendships and alliances formed, gave him strength. The day of departure arrived. The plains of Elthera were filled with beings from across the planet, bidding farewell to their new hero and his crew. Jonathan, with the sword strapped to his back, stood at the forefront, his eyes set on the stars. "We go not as conquerors but as guardians," Jonathan declared, his voice carrying across the crowd. "We seek to protect, to preserve, and to ensure that the light of knowledge and peace shines across the cosmos." With a final nod, he turned, leading his team onto the luminous path. The ship's engines roared to life, lifting them into the sky, higher and higher, until Elthera was but a dot in the vast expanse of space. Jonathan took a deep breath, the weight of his mission settling on his shoulders, but also the exhilaration of the journey ahead. The stars stretched out before them, each a potential destination, each a world holding secrets waiting to be uncovered. As the ship entered the fold of hyperspace, Jonathan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The universe was vast, its mysteries endless, but together, they would face whatever lay ahead. Their journey was just beginning, and with the sword's light to guide them, they would traverse the stars, uncovering the legacy of the Thraxilians, confronting the remnants of darkness, and ensuring that peace, fragile as it might be, could take root in even the most distant corners of the galaxy. As the luminous path hurtled through the vast reaches of hyperspace, the crew settled into their new routines. The ship was a marvel of Eltheran technology, fused with the wisdom gleaned from Jonathan's visions through the sword. Its sleek design and advanced systems made it one of the most formidable vessels ever constructed, capable of long journeys and facing the unknown. Jonathan spent much of his time in the ship's command center, poring over the maps and fragments of information the sword had shared. Each point of light on the star map represented a possible destination, a world that might hold another artifact. The task of determining their next move weighed heavily on him, but he found solace in the camaraderie of his crew. Among them was Sira, an Eldera who had chosen to take physical form to accompany the mission. Her ethereal presence was a constant reminder of the ancient powers that still resonated within the galaxy. Then there was Kale, a Marnak strategist with a keen mind for tactics, whose telekinetic abilities had been invaluable in battle. Rounding out the team was Torin, a rugged Dernish warrior whose loyalty and strength made him an unwavering ally. Each member of the crew brought unique skills and perspectives, and together, they formed a unit that Jonathan felt could face any challenge. As they navigated the stars, they shared stories of their worlds, of the lives they had left behind and the hopes they carried with them. Their first destination was a planet known as Vandara, a world shrouded in dense jungles and ancient ruins. The sword had pulsed with particular intensity when Vandara appeared on the star map, indicating that something of great importance lay hidden there. When they arrived, Vandara was both breathtaking and foreboding. Towering trees with bioluminescent leaves stretched into the sky, casting a soft glow over the jungle floor. Strange creatures darted between the shadows, their eyes glinting in the dim light. The ruins, overgrown with vines and moss, spoke of a civilization long lost to time. As the crew disembarked, Jonathan felt the sword hum against his back, its energy syncing with the environment. He led the way, guided by an unseen force, his footsteps light but purposeful. They navigated through the dense jungle, their path winding towards the heart of the ruins. The air grew thick with the scent of ancient stone and vegetation, and the sounds of the jungle seemed to quiet as they approached their destination. Finally, they reached a clearing where an immense ziggurat rose, its weathered stones etched with symbols that resonated with the sword's energy. At the summit of the ziggurat, they found a pedestal similar to the one on Elthera. Upon it rested another artifact, a crystalline orb that seemed to pulse with a rhythm akin to a heartbeat. Jonathan approached cautiously, his hand reaching out to the orb. As his fingers made contact, a surge of visions flooded his mind, filling the void with images of Vandara's past, a thriving civilization, its rise and fall, and the guardianship of the orb, an object of immense power. But the orb was not unguarded. As Jonathan lifted it from the pedestal, the jungle around them erupted in activity. From the shadows emerged the remnants, twisted beings who had once been Vandera's protectors but had been corrupted by the dark forces they sought to repel. Their grotesque forms, a blend of flesh and stone, moved with unnatural agility, their hollow eyes filled with malevolence. The crew quickly formed a defensive perimeter, each member drawing upon their unique abilities. Syrah, in her ethereal form, projected shields of light, repelling the remnants' advances. Kale, with a focused mind, manipulated the environment, using fallen trees and debris to create barriers. Torin, with his brute strength, met the creatures head-on, his mighty blows echoing through the clearing. Jonathan, holding the orb, felt a connection to the ancient civilization and the remnants of their power. He knew that the orb held the key to restoring balance to Vandera, to undoing the corruption that had taken hold. Channeling the energy of the sword, he merged its light with the orb's, sending waves of purifying force through the clearing. The remnants, caught in the crossfire of this unleashed energy, were purged of their corruption. Their twisted forms collapsed, leaving behind the faint outlines of what they once were, honorable guardians now at peace. The jungle, too, seemed to sigh in relief, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jonathan turned to his crew, his resolve strengthened. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice firm but laced with compassion. "Each artifact we find is a step towards restoring the balance, not just for Vandera, but for all the worlds touched by the Thraxilians' legacy." The crew nodded, their spirits undeterred by the challenges they had faced. Together, they knew they could face whatever lay ahead. With the orb now secure, they returned to the luminous path, ready to chart their next course. The stars awaited, and with each step, they moved closer to understanding the vast tapestry of the universe they were destined to protect. As the luminous path ascended from Vandera's atmosphere, the crew settled the orb into the ship's containment chamber, designed to house the ancient artifacts they would collect. The orb glowed softly, pulsating in sync with the ship's energy systems, as though recognizing the protection it now had. Jonathan gathered the crew in the ship's central chamber, the soft hum of the engines providing a rhythmic background. The experience on Vandera had been a revelation, not only in terms of the power they were dealing with but also the stakes involved. Every artifact they retrieved was a piece of a larger puzzle, and each was guarded by remnants of civilizations long gone, corrupted or otherwise. "We have to be prepared," Jonathan began, his tone solemn. "The remnants were just one form of defense. We don't know what we'll face next, but it's clear that these artifacts are not meant to be taken lightly. They're not just relics. They're living links to ancient powers that could either protect or destroy." Syrah, her form shimmering slightly in the ship's artificial light, nodded. "We are dealing with forces that even the Thraxilians might not have fully understood. Each artifact we encounter will likely have its own guardians or challenges, remnants of the civilizations that created or revered them." Kale leaned forward, his eyes narrowed in thought. "The key is understanding these forces before we act. We need to learn from the orb, see if it can give us any insight into what we're facing. If we can decipher its energy patterns, it might help us with the next artifact." Torin, ever the pragmatist, folded his arms. "Whatever insight we gain, we need to be ready to fight. Each of these places might be more dangerous than the last, and not all challenges can be solved with knowledge alone." Jonathan appreciated their perspectives, each grounded in their unique experiences and strengths. He felt a surge of gratitude for his crew, their unity in purpose giving him the strength to lead them through the unknown. Over the following days, the crew worked tirelessly to study the orb. Syrah and Kale led the effort, using a combination of Eltheran technology and Jonathan's connection through the sword to analyze its properties. The orb seemed to resonate with a frequency that hinted at ancient knowledge, a deep well of history and energy waiting to be tapped. Jonathan, meanwhile, continued to meditate with the sword, seeking further guidance. The sword, ever enigmatic, provided glimpses, flashes of worlds bathed in light and shadow, of cosmic struggles and ancient pacts. One vision stood out among the rest, a barren desert world with twin suns, its surface marked by endless dunes and ruins that whispered of a civilization long buried beneath the sands. The vision was accompanied by a strong pull, a sense of urgency that Jonathan could not ignore. He shared this with the crew, and they collectively agreed that this desert world would be their next destination. The sword's guidance had proven invaluable before, and they trusted it would lead them true once more. Their course set, the luminous path altered its trajectory, cutting through the fabric of hyperspace toward this new world. As they traveled, the crew prepared for what lay ahead, drawing upon the lessons from Vandara. They knew each mission would test them in new ways, both as individuals and as a team. When they emerged from hyperspace, the desert world loomed before them, its twin suns casting a harsh glow over its arid landscape. The planet was devoid of lush vegetation or visible water sources, an endless expanse of sand and stone. Yet, Jonathan felt the same pull as before, the sword humming at his side, directing him toward a specific location. They landed near what appeared to be the remnants of a once great city, its towering spires now crumbled into massive heaps of stone. The air was thick with the heat of the suns, and a dry wind carried the scent of ancient dust. The ruins stretched far and wide, a labyrinth of history waiting to be uncovered. Jonathan, along with Sira, Kale, and Torin, began their trek through the ruins. The orb from Vandara, now attuned to their mission, glowed faintly in Kale's hands, as if reacting to the energies of the desert world. They followed its light deeper into the ruins, navigating through narrow passageways and crumbling arches. The deeper they ventured, the more they felt the presence of something ancient, something powerful. At the heart of the city, they discovered a massive temple, its entrance guarded by towering statues of beings that resembled both the Thraxilians and something more alien, more primal. Inside the temple, they found another pedestal, similar to the one on Vandara but more intricately designed, with symbols that seemed to shift as they looked at them. Atop the pedestal was a second artifact, a crystalline staff that seemed to shimmer with the heat of the desert, its core pulsing with a rhythm that matched the orb. Jonathan approached the staff, the sword at his side resonating with the artifact's energy. He knew that taking the staff would awaken whatever guardians or challenges had been set in place. He glanced at his crew, who stood ready, each prepared for whatever might come. With a steady hand, Jonathan grasped the staff. As he lifted it, the ground beneath them trembled, and from the shadows of the temple emerged creatures made of sand and stone, their forms shifting and swirling as they advanced. The battle was immediate and intense. Sira unleashed waves of light, creating barriers to hold back the creatures. Kale used his telekinetic powers to hurl debris, while Torin charged head-on, his strength meeting the creatures' relentless force. Jonathan, wielding the staff and the sword, felt their combined power surge through him. He understood that the staff was a key to harnessing the desert's energy, a tool to control the very elements that threatened them. Focusing his mind, he directed the staff's energy toward the creatures, causing them to dissolve back into the sand from which they had risen. The temple quieted, the echoes of their battle fading into the stillness of the ruins. The staff, now calm in Jonathan's hands, radiated a warmth that seemed to merge with the sword's light. They had secured another artifact, but Jonathan knew their journey was far from over. Each success brought them closer to understanding the Thraxilian legacy and the cosmic balance they were meant to protect. As they prepared to leave the desert world, the weight of their mission pressed upon them, but so too did the strength they drew from each other and the hope they carried for all the worlds yet to be saved. With the staff securely stored alongside the orb, the luminous path rose from the desert world, leaving the ruins and its ancient guardians behind. As they ascended, the twin suns of the planet cast long shadows over the remnants of the ancient civilization, a testament to the passage of time and the enduring secrets of the universe. Back aboard the ship, the crew gathered in the central chamber to assess their latest acquisition. The staff pulsed gently, harmonizing with the orb, the two artifacts seemingly connected in ways they had yet to fully understand. The sword, ever present at Jonathan's side, resonated with a sense of completion, as if they were piecing together a puzzle that spanned across the stars. Jonathan, holding the staff, spoke to his crew. Each artifact is a fragment of something much larger. They're not just relics, they're conduits of power and history. Vandara's orb and this staff from the desert world. They're telling us something about the civilizations that once thrived and the forces that shaped them. Sira's form shimmered slightly as she added, "These artifacts are tied to the very fabric of their worlds." The staff seems to harness the energy of the desert, just as the orb resonated with Vandara's jungles. It's likely that each artifact we find will be similarly attuned to its environment, acting as both a protector and a beacon. Kale, ever the strategist, nodded thoughtfully. We need to decipher the patterns in these artifacts. If we can understand their purpose and how they interconnect, we might gain insight into the larger picture. perhaps even the intentions of the Thraxilians. Torin leaned against the wall, his expression serious. And we need to be ready for whatever comes next. The Guardians on these worlds are formidable, and there's no telling what we'll face with the next artifact. Jonathan appreciated their insights. The challenges they had encountered were only growing in complexity, but so was their understanding. Each step forward brought new revelations and new questions. He knew they were on the cusp of something monumental, but the path ahead remained uncertain. The ship's sensors interrupted their discussion, alerting them to a disturbance in the surrounding space. Jonathan quickly moved to the command center, the crew following close behind. The readings indicated an anomaly, a rift in space that pulsed with an energy signature similar to the artifacts they had encountered. The crew stared at the swirling vortex displayed on the monitors, a portal-like phenomenon that seemed to beckon them forward. Jonathan felt the sword at his side hum with recognition, urging him to explore this new mystery. This could be the key to understanding the artifacts, Jonathan said, his voice filled with both caution and curiosity. We need to investigate, but we must be prepared for anything. Syrah agreed, her form flickering with a sense of anticipation. The rift might lead us to another world or perhaps to a source of the artifact's power. We should proceed, but with vigilance. Kale and Torin nodded, their expressions resolute. The crew quickly made their preparations, securing the ship and readying themselves for whatever lay beyond the rift. Jonathan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their mission but also the thrill of discovery. The luminous path adjusted its course, heading directly for the anomaly. As they approached, the rift's energy intensified, and the ship systems responded, adapting to the fluctuations in space-time. The crew braced themselves as they crossed the threshold, the ship engulfed in a brilliant light. On the other side, they emerged into a realm unlike anything they had seen before. Stars glittered in patterns that defied known constellations, and the space around them seemed to ripple with vibrant colors. It was a place that felt both ancient and alive, a nexus where time and space converged. At the center of this realm floated a colossal structure, an amalgamation of stone and metal, its design echoing elements from both the Vandaran and desert civilizations. It was a temple, but far grander, exuding an aura of power that resonated with the artifacts they carried. Jonathan felt the sword and the staff react in unison, their energies aligning with the structure before them. He knew this was a pivotal moment, a place where the answers they sought might finally come into focus. Guiding the ship closer, Jonathan prepared to lead his crew into the heart of this enigmatic temple. The journey they had embarked on was reaching a critical juncture, and the mysteries of the Thraxilians, the artifacts, and the balance they sought to protect were on the verge of unfolding. With determination and unity, they prepared to uncover the secrets that lay ahead, ready to face whatever truths and challenges awaited them in this timeless realm.